Billion-dollar empires are colliding, and a 20-year-old from the Philippines just pulled the trigger. Earlier tonight at the Indian Wells Tennis Garden, Alex Eala dismantled world number 4 Coco Gauff 6-2, 2-0 inches, just 54 blistering minutes, punching her ticket into the round of 16 at the BNP Paribas Open for the first time in her professional career. But here's the conversation nobody is having openly yet. The instant that final point dropped, the instant Gauff crossed to the net and conceded, a completely separate battle ignited. Not on the hard-court surface, but inside the conference rooms of the most powerful companies on earth, because the corporate race to secure Alex Eala's name, her story, and her cultural weight has been quietly intensifying for months. What unfolded at Indian Wells tonight was not simply a tennis scoreline. It was a detonation that rattled every boardroom with a sports marketing budget. Strap in, because what follows goes far beyond serves and statistics. This is the untold story of how one young woman became the single most aggressively pursued commercial asset in all of women's tennis, and the billion-dollar war that almost nobody saw coming. Every commercial dynasty originates somewhere unassuming, somewhere the cameras haven't found yet. For Alex Eala, that origin point was a Milo sports clinic in the Philippines. A small child gripping a racket, while the global sports industry directed its attention elsewhere entirely. Her foundation was laid inside those Milo grassroots programs, community-level clinics engineered to ignite athletic ambition across Filipino youth, long before any realistic conversation about international stardom could begin. She wasn't a packaged commodity being positioned for market. She was simply a child who fell in love with a sport. Yet the corporations arrived earlier than the public record suggests. Eala signed her debut endorsement agreement with Globe Telecom at just 8 years of age. Sit with that number. 8. Most children at that stage of life are still memorizing basic arithmetic. Alex Eala was already bound by a corporate contract with one of the Philippines' dominant telecommunications companies. That arrangement wasn't purely commercial. It was foundational to everything that followed. Globe didn't sign a tennis player. Globe signed a conviction. A belief that this specific child carried something rare and remarkable that the world would eventually demand. By 2019, she had added Nike to her growing list of partners. 3 years after that, in 2022, the Bank of the Philippine Islands formalized their own endorsement relationship with her. Piece by piece, quietly and with remarkable intention, a commercial ecosystem was being assembled around a teenager who was simultaneously climbing every junior ranking chart on the professional circuit. Babolat, the distinguished French racket manufacturer, whose legacy was partly shaped by Rafael Nadal's generational dominance, provided her equipment throughout her rise. The Philippines has historically faced significant limitations in government-level funding for elite sporting development. Set against that reality, Eala's corporate backing wasn't merely an advantage. It was the difference between a dream surviving and dissolving entirely. Without Nike, without Babolat, without Globe, there likely would have been no pathway to the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, no pathway to professional competition, no pathway to any chapter of this story. What demands attention isn't simply that she attracted sponsors at an unusually early age. What demands attention is that every brand that committed to her did so on the basis of character, trajectory, and an intangible gravitational pull that existed long before any WTA title was possible. They weren't investing in a proven champion. They were deliberately constructing the conditions inside which one could emerge. Certain moments don't merely alter careers. Certain moments fundamentally rewrite commercial timelines. When Eala arrived at the 2025 Miami Open, her WTA ranking sat at 140. She had received a wildcard entry into a WTA 1000 tournament stacked with Grand Slam royalty and established professionals. Nobody in the analyst community had projected her advancing beyond the opening round. The broadcast cameras weren't stationed outside her locker room. Then she started winning matches she had no statistical business winning. She dispatched Jelena Ostapenko. She removed Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion, from the draw entirely. Then, in a performance that genuinely paralyzed the professional tennis establishment, she stepped onto the court against world number 2 Iga Swiatek and departed victorious. 3 Grand Slam champions, eliminated in sequence by a 20-year-old who entered the tournament as an afterthought. That single Miami run propelled her inside the WTA Top 100, making her the first Filipino professional in history to reach that landmark. Her social media numbers erupted overnight. Sponsors who had been observing cautiously from the periphery suddenly initiated aggressive internal strategy discussions. Nike's existing relationship intensified considerably. Babolat's narrative connection to her journey grew substantially more prominent. Globe Telecom's decade of patient investment began generating cultural returns that no marketing forecast could have responsibly projected. Industry analysts began drawing deliberate comparisons between Eala and Emma Raducanu, the British-Chinese phenomenon who captured the 2021 US Open and immediately unleashed a commercial avalanche across multiple continents. Both athletes carry simultaneous crossover appeal across several of the most commercially valuable markets on Earth, including Japan, China, the Philippines, and the expanding global audience that professional tennis has been actively courting for years. Sky Sports presenter Gigi Salmon delivered what may be the most commercially provocative assessment of the entire season when she suggested that in terms of raw crowd magnetism and spectator appeal, Eala might already represent the most compelling presence in women's tennis, regardless of where her name appears on a ranking sheet. Absorb that verdict carefully, regardless of ranking. That single phrase signals a genuinely seismic transformation in how sports marketing assigns value. For decades, commercial worth mapped directly onto ranking position. The number one player commanded the largest deal. The hierarchy remained numerical, rigid, and entirely predictable. Alex Eala is dismantling that model completely, because the crowds filling her practice courts, the millions consuming her content across platforms, the supporters traveling internationally purely to witness her compete. That depth of loyalty operates entirely independently of a WTA ranking number, and every serious brand executive understands precisely what that means for revenue projections. In September 2025, a post erupted across Filipino social media claiming that Wilson, the American sports equipment manufacturer, had extended Alex Eala a $45 million endorsement offer, and that she had formally accepted. The fabricated content accumulated over 103,000 emotional reactions before fact-checking organizations could begin containing the spread. The post included a manufactured quote attributed directly to Eala referencing plans to direct the fictional funds toward uplifting Filipino communities. Fact-checking organizations, Verifiles, and Rappler both issued formal public debunks. Wilson had made no such announcement. The entire narrative was constructed from nothing. But pause and truly absorb what actually happened here. A completely fictional contract, carrying zero basis in documented reality, generated over 100,000 emotional responses on a single platform. People forwarded it without verification. People celebrated it without confirmation. People argued about it without a single piece of supporting evidence. Because the story felt emotionally accurate. Because the audience needed it to be real. Because the commercial appetite surrounding Alex Eala's name had expanded so dramatically that even a fabricated story could generate the kind of engagement that legitimate campaigns spend millions attempting to manufacture. Consider the full implication of that reality. Wilson's brand name circulated globally. Their identity appeared in millions of Filipino feeds, without their marketing team spending a single dollar to place it there. The rumor alone delivered brand exposure that no conventional advertising investment could have purchased. When a fabricated story about an athlete generates more organic traction than most verified campaigns achieve, every serious player in the commercial industry takes exhaustive notes and recalibrates their understanding of what cultural phenomena are truly worth. The lie revealed something far more significant than the truth it distorted. Alex Eala has moved beyond conventional sponsorship territory. She has become a cultural force, and cultural forces carry a commercial valuation that no contract figure can fully capture. 14 days before the Indian Wells draw was publicly announced, something meaningful occurred at SM Mega Mall in Manila. On February 22, 2026, Milo Philippines formally revealed Eala as the newest ambassador for its signature My Milo Story campaign, a sweeping national initiative celebrating the deeply personal bonds Filipinos across generations maintain with the brand. Milo's vice president of marketing articulated the alignment with notable precision, explaining that Eala's progression from grassroots clinic participant to world-class professional embodied everything the brand's 60-year legacy of building champions represented. This was not a transactional endorsement announcement executed for immediate return. Milo wasn't purchasing access to Eala's digital audience. Milo was reclaiming its own origin story, Because Eala literally began her athletic life inside a Milo sports clinic. The circle was completing itself openly on a national stage, with full corporate ceremony and genuine emotional resonance. The campaign targeted 3 million Filipino story submissions under the hashtag #MyMiloStory, a nationwide initiative designed to bridge grassroots athletic participation with elite professional achievement in the public imagination. Then barely 2 weeks after that Manila launch, the Indian Wells tournament began. Even before Eala played a single competitive point, fans arrived in numbers that confused tournament staff. Her Instagram following approached 960,000, more than double the figures of comparable WTA-ranked players at equivalent stages of their development. A day in the life video, produced by the BNP Paribas Open's official YouTube channel, became the single most viewed piece of tournament content produced anywhere in 2026 by a considerable margin. Coco Gauff herself had publicly acknowledged the phenomenon following their previous encounter in Dubai, openly thanking Eala supporters for filling center court and crediting her with drawing an entirely new demographic into the professional game. Then came Sunday evening on Stadium 1. Eala controlled every exchange from the baseline with precision that looked almost clinical, breaking Gauff across all 4 service games in the opening set, producing 12 unforced errors against Gauff's 26, systematically dismantling the world number 4's rhythm so completely that Gauff accumulated 7 double faults before ultimately retiring with a left arm injury. Gauff later described the sensation as resembling a firework detonating from inside the limb, the pain intensifying until continuing became medically indefensible. And Eala stood on Stadium 1 beneath the lights and told the crowd she genuinely hadn't wanted to win this way, but acknowledged it remained a profoundly significant moment in her life. Grace under global scrutiny, composure while the commercial machinery surrounding her name accelerated to velocities that no 20-year-old should reasonably be expected to manage. Here is where the figures become genuinely staggering. Eala's documented career prize money reached approximately $1.36 million as of late 2025, a figure that, while meaningful for her age, represents only the smallest and most visible layer of a commercial architecture being assembled at remarkable speed. Prize money is almost beside the point in this conversation. The real wealth, the category defining generational wealth, moves through endorsements, licensing structures, content partnerships, and the kind of cultural ambassadorship that transcends sport entirely. Industry sources confirm that top-tier international corporations are actively pursuing Eala for major commercial partnerships, motivated specifically by her demonstrated capacity to bridge multiple high-value markets simultaneously: the Philippines, broader Southeast Asia, Japan, China, and the global tennis audience that every major brand wants to reach more directly. Her WTA ranking reached a career high of 31 on February 23, 2026. And with this Indian Wells 4th-round breakthrough, further advancement appears not merely probable, but structurally inevitable. Consider what already exists within her portfolio without a single additional agreement being signed. Nike, the most commercially dominant apparel brand in the entire history of athletic competition. Babolat, the equipment manufacturer whose story spans 3 decades alongside the greatest clay court competitor the sport has ever produced. Globe Telecom, a source of authentic national resonance, reaching across every Filipino demographic simultaneously. The Bank of the Philippine Islands, providing institutional financial credibility. And Milo, supplying grassroots emotional authenticity, connecting her directly to millions of children who first touched a racket because a brand told them they were capable of becoming champions. Each partner occupies a distinct and non-overlapping space within her identity. None of them compete with each other. All of them reinforce and amplify the others. This portfolio architecture, built carefully across 12 years of deliberate relationship cultivation, represents something that no volume of money can replicate on an accelerated timeline. Any corporation attempting to establish a meaningful position now confronts a landscape where the most resonant territories are already occupied by brands that arrived years ahead of them. Her social media engagement rates dwarf those of players ranked considerably above her, with follower counts more than double those of comparably positioned WTA professionals. The gap between her commercial magnetism and her current ranking creates an extraordinary opportunity for any brand sophisticated enough to move before that ranking catches up to the cultural reality that already exists. Because, when Eala inevitably breaks into the WTA top 20, Every endorsement negotiation currently in progress will face dramatically elevated price expectations as a baseline. The brands already inside her ecosystem secured their rates years ago at figures that will seem incomprehensibly favorable in retrospect. Every brand arriving late will pay a premium that compounds painfully with each passing tournament. From a Milo Sports Clinic in the Philippines to Stadium 1 at Indian Wells, under the brightest lights in professional tennis, Alex Eala's ascent is the most compelling convergence of athletic and commercial narrative in women's tennis today. The brands that believed early built positions they will occupy for decades. The brands still deliberating right now are watching those positions solidify from the outside with no clear path back in. Subscribe now, hit the bell, and share this with someone who needs to know her name. The next chapter arrives sooner than you think.